Psychologists of Reddit, what is something you want to but never would say to a patient or a grown man? Stop making your problems your mother's problems. She's got good intentions but she's enabling all your worst behaviors and addictions, and you know that you're taking advantage of that. To the mom, there's no medal for loving your son the most, you are an enabler. You acknowledged this, which is a good first step, but if it does not change your behavior towards him, it's meaningless. Stop making excuses for him. Stop letting him take advantage of you, because if you don't, the rest of your family has stated that they are going to limit contact with you. You're risking relationships with every other person in your life for an exploitative, codependent one with your son. During couples sessions, he is a toxic butt and you need to get forward of this relationship. I don't do couples anymore. I've found it exceedingly difficult for me to not take a side. My father was hospitalized after a suicide attempt. His doc met my mom and then sat down with my dad. Doc, I met your wife. Dad, yeah. Doc, I can't tell you to divorce your wife. Dad, okay. Dad, oh. To a lot of parents of my patients, you are the problem, not your kids. Stop trying to live their lives for them. And to the religious one, every teenager wonders about sex, you backwards dumb fuck. No one has corrupted them. Had a guy come in and talk about weighing the possibilities of getting back together with his ex or date a new girl from work. Meanwhile, I know from a separate session that his ex faked a pregnancy and miscarriage to get him back last time. Had to sit there and weigh the pros and cons while screaming inside, don't do it buddy. I once saw this client, who was a vain, young guy, full of anger and hate who wanted to crush the people who wronged him. He had a curious backstory of being tragically physically underdeveloped and bullied until he underwent some special medical procedures in high school and grew into a taller, physically fit and handsome guy. I told him, you ever read comic books? Because you remind me a lot of a supervillain. Of course, I went on to explain what I meant by that and to ensure he was benefiting from looking at his behavior and emotion regulation from a new perspective. I was rather proud of that one, and my supervisor at the time acknowledged that he didn't think he could say something like that. What I didn't tell him, but could have, was that I really didn't care how much pussy crushed that morning before coming to see me, and that we would both probably be better off if he kept that crap to himself. As far as psychotherapy goes, I'm more on the blunt side of things. There's really not much I wouldn't tell the person. You just have to find the right way to make it helpful to their treatment goals and delivered in a way they can digest and understand. Hence the therapeutic part. You need to break up with him for the sake of your sanity. I have a very strong ethic in regards to telling the patient what to do. I'll do it when their life is at stake, but they have the right to make horrible decisions and I'm not taking advantage of their vulnerable state to stop them. Used to be employed in the field of social work, so not a psychologist, but the number of times I've wanted to scream at a parent, you are why your kid is an intolerable little crap, is way too high. I do home health, and yeah, a lot of the developmental delays we see are from parents enabling their laziness, not actual dysfunction. The most common. Today I'm in no mood of your evasions and resistances to what we're trying to work with, so stop talking about your dang cats. I care for you, but we're not friends. I'm trying to be as objective as I can, so back off. I don't see the similarities between you and the fictional character you admire. I'm sorry, no one is forced to love you for what you are. We're just exhorted to respect you and recognize your dignity as a human being. So stop bugging that woman for not loving you for your fatness, your intellect and your medieval hygiene habits. So settle for the type of woman that likes your type, or change and be the type of man that attracts the type of woman that you have idealized. The insecurities of this man were so huge it was dangerous to say even the first part of this sentence without risking myself of having his mental breakdown in front of me. I'm a clinical psychologist but since 2014 gave up on giving therapy and entered to the human resources stuff. Medieval hygiene habits, oh dear. Not a psych but a clinical social worker. Wish I could tell parents to discipline their children. You don't have to be an authoritarian to be a good parent, but kids need to learn boundaries, what they can and cannot do. You are raising a little adult. How you parent and treat them will define them for the rest of their life. Do you want an incredibly entitled child, or do you want a child that is respected and respectful? As a teacher, I wish I could tell parents the same. Been in the mental health industry for over 5 years now. Not a licensed psychologist but a counselor. Bro, you're a sociopath. You know you're a sociopath, right? Me. Wishing I could say this too. At this point maybe 5 or 6 clients I've had. I mostly say what is on my mind to my patients. However, I always reframe it to be more appropriate. For example, instead of saying why the frick did you think that was a good idea, I ask what was the thought process that led you to that decision. Let's explore that a bit. The only time I have to really hold my tongue is when it deals with couples and you know there's something toxic or dangerous there. Often, for safety's sake, you have to be very careful what you say, so I typically recommend individual therapy and provide resources in more detail. Note that I always discuss safety concerns even if I don't suspect foul play just to be on the safe side. No, it wasn't your Reiki sessions that helped you dear, it was coming here once a week for months. But yeah, let me just smile and say how good is that Reiki for you. I've had a couple of thoughts I've hid in my treasure trove of thou shall not say to patients if you don't want to get sued type of list, comma good god girl get a grip, comma so how does YOLO feel now that you're talking to a therapist, comma tramp stamp or not, it's still a freaking tattoo, comma I charge by the hour, not by the day, comma we don't accept Groupon, comma stop flirting, I'm not that escort you hired in Chelsea, comma I charge by the hour, not the day. Please elaborate. All I can see is Dr. Paradise on my 600lb life telling Stephen Asante to quit being a giant brat and be a human being for once. Thank you for reminding me of the absolutely giant clusterfuck that whole 2-part episode was. Really put about 99% of my life into perspective. Anything that makes a person feel weaker than they are is something you should never say to a patient, no matter how bad you might want to. As people, we are our own biggest obstacles. As a healer, the goal is to help and do good, never to do harm in any way such like this. It goes against my code. I worked at a PRTF, psychiatric residential treatment facility, for kids for 3 years. I can't tell you how many times I wished I could turn to the parent and say, you're fricking your kid up. I had an 11-year-old girl once that was really sexually active, would run away and sleep with various members of a gang, got several sties and beaten up once. Family therapy was supposed to be weekly but I think mom came maybe 3 times in the kid's 9-month stay. Mom would come to family therapy so perplexed. Why is my daughter doing this? Why does she try to act older? Is someone making her do this? After every home visit the kid would come back with fake nails, bleached hair, thongs, mini skirts, crop tops, etc. All purchased and given to her by mom. Mom also never set a curfew or boundaries and was too busy with her own dysfunctional relationships to care for her daughter. I wanted so badly to scream at her, start acting like a parent and stop sexualizing your 11-year-old. I am a psychologist. I do have some thoughts in mind. I don't want to say them cause at the end. These are just spontaneous thoughts that rapidly come and go, but they do have the possibility of strongly impacting someone's life. I'm a counselor. Do I still count? I work on an inpatient unit and get a good mix of people who are invested in their treatment and people who cannot be bothered. There are some that I really want to tell them some variation on have you considered your problems are caused by you being an butthole but it's not worth it. Occasionally you can get close to that statement but keep it therapeutic, but not often enough. I work in substance use and I want to tell people that if they are only here for meds to get the frick out because they bloat everybody's caseload and waste time that could be spent on people who are ready to work when they never show up for clinical apps. This doesn't exactly answer the question but it's my greatest challenge as a psychologist. A lot of young tweens come in with newly acquired, permanent disabilities and they tell me they don't see a lot of hope for the future. Of course I tell them there is all the hope in the world and they can still lead fulfilling lives. But I developed a permanent disability when I was in my 20s and I wish I'd ended it. Every day is pure pain and misery and I've lost amazing relationships because I just can't keep up if she wants to go on a hike or just walk the dog. Who wants to waste their time with someone that can't even protect them? I didn't marry my husband so he could protect me. A gun or a dog could do that. I married him because I love and respect the person he is. I've never understood women who swoon over the idea of needing a man around in case of muggers or bears or whatever. It actually is all your fault and you're making terrible choices that are running your life, the lives of those around you. If only. I had a school counselor that would have said probably everything on this thread. The bar is kind of low for school social workers. You're lying. I know you're lying. If I confront you, you will deny lying. And your lying is so bad that maybe even you are lying to yourself. I'm not a psychologist. I'm an army chaplain. There are so many things. Listen, specialist. If you want to be happy again, divorce the stripper. Your marriage was doomed from the start. I had a therapist that actually did go off on me when I was a teenager. I was trying to get advice on my father's behavior, how he hit me, screamed at me, called me names, etc. She told me she didn't believe me, called my dad in and told him all the things I said about him. I started sobbing during the middle of it. I don't know what led up to it, but I told her I was so depressed because of his abuse. She ended up screaming at me, "Do you want me to call you an ambulance? Since you're so suicidal, here, I'll call an ambulance for you." I had never said that I was suicidal, or anything like that. I ran out of there sobbing, and walked a few miles before my dad could find me. The kicker is that she ended up texting my dad the next day acting like she never said those things. She said something like, "Your daughter made such a commotion with her screaming and crying yesterday that it interrupted my co-worker's sessions. I am not going to see her anymore." Then went into what kind of diseases she thought I had. I am not sure if I am right, but I was under the impression that therapists can't diagnose. Not sure though. Not all therapists are clinical doctors, so not all therapists can diagnose. Not all psychiatrists and psychologists are trained properly in therapy, so a diagnosing type doc might not be a therapy doc. They might just be a testing or prescribing doc. Also, your therapist sounded nuts. Student mental health nurse here, but I'd never say anything that devalues someone's feelings. I also can't stand it when staff stigmatize and are dismissive of personality disorders and self-harm. Being mentally ill myself was what inspired me to want to be a nurse. And I was under crisis care, and one of the most damaging things I heard was, "Are you sure you're not just being sensitive?" as well as being told I wasn't really that ill, as my self-harm wasn't as bad as some other patients they see. Stop having freaking kids, you selfish bee. You can't manage this one because you've got 8 others. 5 different fathers, and play favorites. The far more interesting question to ask, at least for me, those things you want to say are triggered by something in the patient, and your reaction to it. Do you take those reactions and yourself into account when dealing with those patients? How? Do you discuss them with a professional colleague or coach? Does it tell you something about yourself? Science hasn't figured out how to help the type of problems you're having. Alternatively, your problems are solvable, but I can't help you because of various factors outside my control. Kids with terrible parents, poverty, lack of providers or resources in rural poor regions. Not a psych, but used to drink with a gaggle of them at my favorite bar. Got to know them over a year or so. One of them was almost stereotypical older southern gay dude. Very nice, pleasant, well-dressed 60-ish guy. Easygoing. Had the drawl with a bit of flamboyance. Really great dude. One day I came in, ordered a drink, said, "How's business?" Frickin' nuts. Verian is frickin' nuts. When I was in college, getting my BA in psychology, one of our profs, who was also a therapist, told us about a client of his, a lady in her late 30s that has symptoms of mild depression for a week or 2, then mild anxiety for another few weeks, then some mild something else, and so on for about a year. He said that every week he had to bite his tongue not to say, "Lady, you need to get laid." The last time he saw her, she only came to say that she's so grateful that therapy worked. She's been feeling wonderful for a while. She wasn't letting stuff get to her, that he's a great therapist and she'll recommend him, etc. Oh, and that she just started seeing someone who was good in bed. Just a gentle reminder to those sharing stories of their clients, you may be anonymous on here, and so is the person you're speaking about. But remember that it only takes one person to recognize a story and for it to cause a crap storm. Be careful with what you share about current previous clients. You always give the best advice, but I can't. Pretty sure we have all thought this one here in Mexico. Exclamation point por pendejo. In Spanish sounds better cause the word in Mexico is a pretty common to define stupidity. Basically is a combination of it's your own dang fault and cause you're stupid. Your wife cheated on you because you treated her like a slave for years. You are a horrible parent who refuses to consider for a moment how your kids feel when you tell them she is a W, while they cry for her. You are not owed a woman, and if you leer at me again or make a comment on my body, your option for therapy will be a man or one of the other women you have told me aren't attractive enough to help you. The problem in your life is you. Stop hiding behind your pseudo-intellectual BS. Stop being a martyr. Make a goddamn choice and go in that direction. Stop blaming everyone else for causing your issues and stop shutting me down when we approach anything of value. Your kid is autistic, but the reason he can't talk and has behavior problems is because you're a crappy parent who can't follow through with even the simplest instructions. I see a lot of comments full of things that would actually be helpful, but instead, I've wasted tons of money for therapist after therapist to sit there for an hour and occasionally say, what do you think you should do about that and how does that make you feel? So I guess I wonder, if you can't actually say anything meaningful, practical, and helpful, what the heck is your purpose? Pretty sure my therapist wants me to frick off sometimes. We have become pretty close and sometimes he will literally just cuss me out. Then we will laugh about it and continue the session. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.